Alright guys, welcome back to... No, seriously, what the fuck is happening in Darktide? Today's topic is one a lot of you have been requesting over the last week, a breakdown of the new mission, the Dark Communion. I've spent some time digesting it and running the map over and over to try and get all the different voice lines that can happen, going back through Fatshark's blogs about this mission and combing the Darktide wiki. I feel pretty confident that I've got a clear picture of who the mysterious voice is, what we learn throughout the map, and also an answer as to what the hell is being done with Rodin's body in the finale. So get comfy and let's dive in, because there is a lot to unpack here. Obey my cat! Hit the subscribe button. Let's start by briefly laying some groundwork so we are all starting on the same page. In the Dark Communion narrative trailer, we get a few key details that set up the major important questions of the mission. The first being, why are there not more publicly accessible bathrooms in the Carnival District so this poor soldier can relieve himself? The second question we have is, who is this hooded figure we see watching Operative Poopy Pants as he waddles away? Who is this hooded figure we see watching Operative Poopy Pants as he waddles away? Next, we see Wolfer and Rinda's conversation in a familiar basement. We see what looks like a ritual circle, some dregs that don't quite look like the others we've seen before praying around dead poxwalkers, and Rinda telling us,
"Their sacrifice has opened the door by which another will enter."
Raising the questions of, what on earth are they doing in this basement? Is it a ritual itself? What are these dregs? And who is opening a door, and how, and why, and what's coming through said door? Lastly, we get a glimpse of the cathedral with a swirling storm above, an obvious sign that things definitely aren't just normal and straightforward as we've seen so far throughout Darktide. Okay, so now that we've got all the major points from the trailer we want to keep an eye out for, let's get into the actual mission. Our mission handler is Rannik, accompanied by Zola, and Rannik briefs us thusly.
Recent developments with the Mobian 21st have reinforced the need to put an end to the distribution of the blighted stims once and for all. You're to insert into the Carnival, specifically in the vicinity of the Cathedral of Messalina Vengeant. Don't get any ideas. This district's just as squalid as the rest of it. All intel points towards the Cathedral itself as being the next waypoint in this squalid little trail. Advance, investigate, and await further instructions. That'll be all.
The recent developments with the Mobian 21st is in reference to the Unrelenting Hordes event back in September of 2024, where the Loyal Regiment became corrupted and turned into groaners due to taking the tainted stims. So our rejects are here to track down the final source of the blighted stims that have corrupted the Mobian 21st Regiment, as well as being used in bulk in an attempted attack by the Cult of Admonition that we stopped during the Rolling Steel operation. This is what I tend to call the Admonition Green Goo, this bright green liquid that we sabotage in part 2 of the Traitor Curse. The mission begins, we get dropped off by the Valkyrie, and right away Rannik says,
Well, I have to say, none of the reports mentioned that.
Now this tells us that the warp storm, or whatever you want to call this we see above the cathedral, is likely very recent. Going back to the narrative trailer, we see Mobian 53rd soldiers and Wormwood operatives fighting off a group of Mobian 6 traitors, so we know there is a presence active in the district from the Loyalist warband. If the storm is above the cathedral at the same time as the events we see in this trailer, presumably everyone from the 53rd and the warband died before being able to make a report that something new was happening. So in theory, our rejects are arriving in relatively short order after this trailer takes place. Zola replies to Rannik,
"Maybe your sources didn't consider a vortex of heretical energy worth mentioning."
Oh, you have a waspish tongue, Augustine.
Key detail, Zola's first name is Augustine. This is actually really important and the first time we've heard this information in game, which is probably at least half the reason why Rannik says it so much.
Augustine, Augustine, Augustine.
It's for our sake as an audience to make sure that we realize Zola's full name, because it's a clue as to her connection with Wolfer. We've known for some time now that Zola and Wolfer know each other personally. Wolfer has told the Karnak twins about her.
"I know you're out there, Zola. Wolfer said you had guts."
And Rannik accuses Zola of being obsessed with him in the Orthus offensive.
The Traitor Foxnet is ablaze. If you are to extract your team, it must be now.
I have to get to Wolfer. I have to know.
No. What?
I...
Very well. Explicator Zola, I relieve you of your responsibilities to this mission.
But the question has been, how do they know each other? Did Zola serve in the 6th? Now that we know her name is Augustine Zola, and the data slate operative Poopy Pants drops when he's killed in the narrative trailer also tells us that Wolfer's first name is Byron, we need to take a look at this script case trinket you can get as a penance reward. The trinket says, inside is a folded piece of parchment with a prayer to Saint Messalina, pleading for the safety of someone named Byron, and signed by OZ. We still don't know exactly the nature of their relationship based on this, but it is clear that Zola was not with the Mobian 6 when she wrote this, pleading for Wolfer's safety. This being 40k, my first guess would be that Wolfer is a father figure to Zola, just because that's a theme that gets repeated over and over again in this universe. But it could be a different type of familial connection, or possibly even an entirely different type of relationship altogether. Rannik refusing to call Zola anything but her first name also reinforces something we'll see throughout the mission: his blatant lack of respect for her. We haven't seen Zola and Rannik interact with each other since he cut her off during the Orthus offensive. We know through her journals that Rannik chewed her out and made her sign a document detailing her so-called mistakes and operational failures during the offensive, and the Dark Communion is structured in a way that's almost a foil to the Orthus offensive that ultimately somewhat vindicates Zola. Right out of the gate, Rannik is shown to be underinformed and clearly not as prepared as he thinks he is.
It occurs to me that perhaps we are not as prepared for this as I had believed.
He has a very unconcerned and outright dismissive attitude toward anything Zola says throughout the mission, up until our strike team intercepts communications between the mysterious voice and Wolfer for the first time.
I have no time for your mysticism. The Inquisition is here. Do as thou wilt, so long as it serveth the Grandfather. What did we just hear?
I don't know. Why didn't I know?
This is the first crack we see in Rannik's cool, collected, and utmost professional facade. He is under the impression that we're just here to intercept the source of the stims. Now there's a strange person or being of some kind admonishing Wolfer, speaking of a prophecy, and talking about the power in the bond between siblings. This is the moment that Rannik realizes he may be in over his head and actually has no clue what is truly going on behind the scenes. The interactions between the mysterious voice and Wolfer parallel Rannik and Zola. Wolfer is also losing control of the situation, his facade as a threatening presence in charge completely wiped away, while Rannik is the one on the warband side that completely lacks respect for Zola and her ability. The mysterious voice has clearly also had enough with Wolfer's lack of results and will put up with his blustering no longer.
I tell you, they will not reach the cathedral. We grow tired of thy broken promises, turncoat, and thus the Grandfather.
So, do we know the identity of this mysterious voice? It isn't 100% for sure, but we do know that there is another major player within the Cult of Admonition by the name of Urmal, and she is a woman. It's quite the coincidence that we are now hearing from another cult leader that clearly has a female voice, and I would bet my shiny new Force Greatsword on this voice being Urmal. We'll get into this more when we get to what's happening in the finale, but I'll point out now that the mysterious voice we hear in the intercepted Vox messages between her and Wolfer is the same speaker we hear performing the ritual at the finale of the Dark Communion. It would make sense if this was Urmal, because Urmal is the person who saved Rinda's life by a surgical intervention after the Orthus offensive. Urmal must have some knowledge of biology and medicine, because it's mentioned that she was surprised by Rinda's physiology when the surgery was performed, and she tinkered with Rinda, adding some of her own experimentations into whatever mutations Rinda was already developing. The Admonition green goo stims have also seemingly been used to force mutations in Dreg units in vats that are stuck into their bodies of the Dreg Ragers, Dreg Mutants, and Chaos Bombs, implying that there is a chain in progressive mutation among them. This had to have come from somewhere, and Urmal is the most likely candidate. So hearing her voice performing the rite on Rodin's body that also needs the same stim goo to complete the ritual feels highly likely that we have the correct character in Urmal being behind the mysterious voice. Again, it isn't 100%, I could be wrong, but based on all the information we have from Fatshark's out-of-game story materials and the events we've seen play out in the game, Urmal is an extremely strong candidate. Remember the mysterious hooded figure watching Operative Poopy Pants from above? Well, what pairs better with a mysterious voice than a mysterious physical entity? Yep, I think this figure may be the same character, which in my theorizing would also make it Urmal. It's worth noting that this is also a pretty similar shot to how we see Rinda introduced in the Traitor Curse Part 2 teaser trailer while she watches the rejects, and how she's spying on them as they walk in during the Orthus offensive. So, camera shot from above behind a spooky person's shoulder who's watching loyalists equals villain. And put on your tinfoil hat, guys, because I've been holding on to this one for a while, so I'm just gonna come right out and say it. This hooded figure is wearing red. You can tell that's likely the case because while we see a red glow being cast from below that could have been casting the same color, we don't see any red lighting sources coming from the right or behind the figure that would actually cast a red shade on their hood based on the post of the railings here and here. If this is a villain, and it is Urmal, and she's a leader of the cult, why isn't she wearing green or the weird yellow we see other drags wearing? I think it's because Urmal is a member of the Dark Mechanicum, which is the heretic version of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Members of the Dark Mechanicum are still most often depicted wearing the red of Mars, which is where the Mechanicum are originally from. Urmal has been tinkering biologically, using the stims to force mutations within Admonition's ranks, saved Rinda's life with a surgery, is performing a ritual using the same stims involving Rodin's body. There's a lot that points to her having deep medical knowledge. But these aren't her only experiments. There's the demonic growth that we've attended to throughout several missions that is also mechanical in nature. Mechanical demons don't generally just come out of the woodwork naturally in 40k. They are intentionally constructed. There's typically two major candidates that construct demonic machines, those being warpsmiths and the Dark Mechanicum. There's actually a bunch of reasons I think the Dark Mechanicum are involved in Darktide. I made a video about it, the link's in the description, so go watch that if you haven't. But I have come to a point where I not only believe it's likely a Dark Mech is present, but it is likely Urmal. Reinforcing this is that Wulfur calls her a creature.
Attend your right, creature, and leave the business of war to me.
And there was the mysterious priest that was suddenly by Wulfur's side before he turned traitor on Nox Alpha that was also a woman.
Wulfur's got a new priest by his side. Maybe she transferred from a different company.
Now this could just be a standard cult priest who's so heavily ingrained in chaos that her form has become twisted beyond normal human features. But the priest from Nox Alpha could have also been a heretical tech priest, and Wulfur refers to her as a creature because she has replaced so much of her original human form with augments, probably still twisted and fucked up ones that would represent some horrifying blend of the diseases and mutations wrought by the touch of Nurgle, along with the mechanical replacement of flesh. I'm just saying, it's absolutely possible. Okay, moving on.
There are signs of another rite having taken place here.
When we get to the cold storage of Gastov's place, we encounter what I believe is supposed to be the location where Rinda and Wulfur are having their conversation from the narrative trailer. The location itself isn't perfect. In the narrative trailer, the ritual circle is actually upstairs in the hallway where all the barrels are. But if you put the ritual circle we see in the mission side by side with the scene in the narrative trailer, you can tell based on the position of the Poxwalker bodies and the exact same broken jars of stim goop plus the full syringe that this is pretty clearly supposed to be the location. So what the hell does this mean? Well, we see the jars of stim goop are actually already broken in the narrative trailer, and we also see the same psychers praying around the circle that are holding up the barriers in the finale ritual, so it would seem that perhaps a ritual was just performed in the trailer. With Rinda being present, and the fact Admonition is apparently trying to fulfill some kind of prophecy that has to do with a bond between siblings,
The moment of prophecy approaches. A sibling bond has power, Captain. It cannot be contested.
I assume that a ritual involving her was just performed or is in the process here. There's a couple voice lines in the mission that outright confirm a ritual happened.
A blasphemous rite underway.
And it probably wasn't a team building exercise like a trust ball.
Can you read any of that?
The translation isn't entirely complete, but in a general sense.
What does it say?
Nothing
good.
Since we know Rinda has likely been slowly mutating on her own for a while, and Urmal added some of her own flourishes to Rinda's biology, it would make sense if whatever ritual that took place here was done by the cult to hasten or baptize Rinda and complete her transition as the Herald of Admonition. Her rite being performed around the same time as Rodin's would make sense with the bond between siblings, and it's also suspicious that Rinda is completely left out of this mission, even though the entire point of it hinges around her brother. Her absence is so suspicious, I'm honestly preparing myself to get ambushed by her any day now. From here, Rannick looks like a buffoon a few more times.
I have been outplayed.
Zola nails him to the wall over not listening to her because she was right about what it would take to stop the situation from escalating.
I told you the Wolfer was the key to all this. You didn't listen.
Wolfer gets chewed out by the cult representative some more.
Hold thy tongue. Our patience runs thin enough as it is.
And we make it to the cathedral. Upon arrival, it becomes clear that what's going on at Messalina Vengeant has less to do with the Stim themselves and is entirely all about this ritual. Rinda Karnak's body is suspended from the sign of the Octad, and large vats of admonition green goop TM are apparently surging liquid into his body. Zola and Rannick are both taken aback, completely shocked and alarmed.
Strike team, violence please, now.
As we approach to dispense the requested violence, we begin to hear a chanting. This voice is the same mysterious voice that we hear in intercepted Vox communications with Wolfer. We can be certain because remember, Wolfer tells her to
Against your right, creature.
There is no doubt this character has been in the cathedral preparing and conducting this ritual. When the first barrier falls and we get a little bit closer to the center of the ritual circle, the voice doing the chanting gets louder. There is also no Vox intercept portrait like there has been when this character has spoken throughout the mission, meaning the voice we hear chanting is live in the room with us. This mysterious voice is somewhere present, but we aren't able to see her. The chanting itself is obviously a dark ritual meant to invoke the powers of chaos and Nurgle. This chant is also the same chant we hear interrupt the original Wormwood transmissions.
Can you hear the voice of truth? The giver of blessings untold.
Can you hear the voice of truth? The giver of blessings untold.
Whatever they're trying to do with Rodin, it is clearly to their dark and heretical ends. Fatshark's blog tells us that they are trying to resurrect Rodin, and most of the ritual chant has nothing that would disagree with that until the end of it. Notice that Great One is capitalized. This is the other that will enter the door that death has opened.
Their sacrifice has opened the door by which another will enter.
They aren't just trying to resurrect Rodin. Admonition is trying to use his body as a vessel. Technically, he will animate and probably begin life anew in their eyes, but this ritual is a summoning. What are they summoning? Well, there's really only one type of Great One where Nurgle is concerned, and that's the Greater Demon of Nurgle, a Great Unclean One. If this is your first experience with Warhammer 40k, or you're not big into Nurgle, you might be wondering what the heck that is. A Great Unclean One is a massive demon. It towers above all of Nurgle's minions in its horrifying, bloated glory. Its skin is ripped open almost like tattered fabric in many places, intestines spilling out and covered in boils and sores. Great Unclean Ones are said to be made in Nurgle's own image, having Nurgle's generally jolly attitude, well, most of them, and are so disgustingly virulent, even being in proximity to one would strip the flesh off of a normal person's bones. Alright, time out. Now, am I saying we're going to fight a Great Unclean One? Fuck no! Am I saying we'll ever even see one, or that I think Admonition's ritual will eventually succeed? Not necessarily. But I am saying that Admonition is performing a summoning ritual and trying to bind the soul of a Great Unclean One into Rodin. In fact, this reveal of a greater demon has actually been hinted at and staring us in the face the whole time. If you check out the Darktide wiki page about Darktongue, people who are way better with Darktongue translations than I have cataloged this graffiti phrase to translate to Great Unclean One. And there's also one that may be part of the prophecy, Nurgle shall be called with death. If Admonition were to be successful, the arrival of a Great Unclean One would also likely usher in his own host of lesser demons. Plague bearers, plague toads, nurglings, the possibilities are endless if we as an audience are lucky, and our rejects are really unlucky. These would essentially be like troops under his command, as Great Unclean Ones are akin to a general in Nurgle's army. It's also interesting to point out that a Great Unclean One's lieutenant is a Herald of Nurgle, and Rinda Karnak's position under Wolfer's command was a lieutenant, which is a bit on the nose. But alas, Admonition's plans were not to come to their horrible fruition this time around. Our rejects pull down the barriers, break open the stim tanks, and Rodin's body dissolves into smoke and flies away. Rannick and Zola are left stunned, unsure of what exactly the cult was trying to do, but Rannick resolves to find out. The mysterious voice is angry, blames Wolfer for the failure of what happened here today, and says,
Wolfer has failed. It is time for the three to meet.
Who are the three? Likely is a type of council of the three core leaders of Admonition. This mysterious voice, which I also posit is probably Urmal, the mysterious cultist from Vox Intercept 6 and who we hear during the Terror in the Dark event, and a mysterious third entity. Whomever it is, we can be pretty damn sure the third isn't Wolfer. I do actually think we've gotten a couple small glimpses of this third leader, as whomever is doing this chanting seems to know the same ritual the mysterious voice in the Dark Communion uses.
Can you hear the voice of truth? The giver of blessings untold!
This voice we heard interrupt the original Wormwood with the same ritual chant also sounds quite a bit like the Vox 12 entity that ends up killing her.
Her soul is mine now, and yours, Inquisitor Grendel, is next.
What exactly is this entity? Only time and Fatshark can tell. Alright guys, there you have it. That's everything I think is happening in the foreground and background of this mission. Well, actually not quite everything. I had a revelation while I was writing this script, but that's going to have to wait for another day. What do you think? Will Admonition be successful in summoning a Great Unclean One? Do you think that we'll finally get to see more demons in Darktide? Where do you think this is going? Until next time, steel yourselves, pray to the Emperor, and keep your skills sharp, because Throne only knows when we'll need them. Actually, I need them now. Come join me for Havoc and regular missions on streams. Times and a link to my Twitch channel are included below. I hope you come join me in the fight against the Darktide. A huge thank you to my wonderful and lovely supporters, Leah S. over on Patreon, and Rue on Top, Comadre, Daniel Gerber, Big Guy, Rot, Aeson, Living Zombie, Zelos Node, Sir Pubert, Arch Dornan, David Stoddard, and Macrove, who are all YouTube channel members.